Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me at the outset thank the organizers for having invited me to this event here. I must say I'm absolutely impressed by the presentation made by the previous speaker. And it just shows what all is possible if we all put our heads and minds together. Just a few hours from now, we'll have a level 5 cyclone hitting on the coast of Andhra Pradesh and Odisha. And it'll bound to leave a huge amount of devastation and destruction behind. I hope it is minimal. But it's important for all of us to recognize that the real challenges are not the ones that come suddenly, not the tsunamis and not the cyclones. The real challenges come from very slow processes and very slow changes, which most of us do not recognize and do not see. Today, in the country, we have a huge push towards urbanization. It's a slow process. And if we look ahead over the next 20 years, I almost see that we are going to end up in a very serious gridlock. If we look at the situation of urbanization in the year 2030, according to one assessment, our GDP would have grown up by 5 times, and about 70% of this GDP would come from our urban centers. The total number of people who would be living in our urban centers would double from where we are today. And what that means is, if in the last 50, 60 years, we've added 280 million people to the current level of urbanization, over the next 20 years, we're going to add an equivalent number of people. And then we have the number of cities that are going to have population more than 1 million. If you look at the entire Europe, we have about maybe 35 cities which have a population that is more than 1 million. In India alone, we're going to have about 70 to 80 cities which are going to be populated at a level that we cannot even fathom. In terms of our ability to handle this change, today we are spending a very, very minimal amount of money on our urban infrastructure. And we need to ramping it up substantially, maybe tenfold, to the level that we reach, so that we are able to provide the kind of riverfront type of a scenario that has been presented earlier. And in all this, we really have a serious challenge at hand. As I see it today, as an average citizen of the country, we are taking a very laissez-faire type of an approach in designing of our cities. And until and unless we make some fundamental changes in our governance structures, we take a relook at how we finance our projects, we make some serious policy initiatives. Until and unless we do all that, we can really land up in a situation where the entire growth prospects of our nation are going to be in jeopardy. And therefore, it's very important for us to pay much more attention than what we currently are to urbanization. Mr. Ramchandran spoke about JNURRM. It's an excellent initiative. But my question to all of us here is it adequate? Is it enough for the kind of challenge that we are going to see over the next few years? To my mind, there are broadly 5 major areas that we really need to be looking at. First of all, financing. Where are we going to get the $1.2 trillion of investment that is needed for this huge urbanization that is happening in the country? Because if we don't have the funds, we'll never be able to achieve any standards which are comparable to the global world. We may call ourselves a global power, but if we don't have that kind of funds, we don't mobilize those funds, we are going to be seriously challenged. The second issue relates to governance. And here again, if you look at any typical city, if we look at Delhi or we look at Bangalore or Calcutta, we need to really change the way we have structured our cities. In a scenario where 70% of the GDP is going to come from our urban centers, a fundamental question we need to ask ourselves is the current structure of governance, is it adequate? Do we have in the governance structures a capacity to develop a vision for the next 20 years and beyond, and also the capacity to deliver? Just before we were discussing a few minutes ago, I was discussing with the gentleman here on where are we lacking? Do we have the structures in place? Do we have the capacity to deliver on the scale that we really need to deliver? And the question, as I see today, is answered. We don't have that capacity today. And the question is, are we looking at these pieces? Do we have a detailed planning starting from the top down to the level of a block or a sub-block on where we want to be? Where are we going to put up cheap housing? What are we going to do with slums? What are we going to do with transportation? What are we going to do with healthcare? All these are serious questions that we need to be seriously looking at all these. And then, of course, since independence, as far as I know, we haven't added too many new cities. I can think of Chandigarh, I can think of Faridabad to an extent, which is more of a satellite town. We have added a few satellite towns. But is there space for greenfield development of new cities? Are we actually contemplating that? The Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor is a good initiative, but it's more geared along the dedicated freight corridor which is going to come up. Are we conceptualizing, are we thinking of having absolutely greenfield cities to be developed across the country? There are, Mr. Ramchandran again mentioned about funding. To my mind, it's a serious issue. And along with funding, there is the issue of how do we execute projects. Typically in the government, as I have seen in my 25 years of experience with the government, most of the time, we tend to go by item rate contracts, where the government does the entire design, the government does everything, and just transfers. In a way, it engages more of labor contractors, I would say, who then deliver the project. Do we need to move away from an item rate type of contract to a turnkey arrangement? A turnkey arrangement where we transfer much more level of risks to the contractors. Do we develop a PPP type of a concessioning arrangement by which we are able to move forward much faster than as we are today? So this is a larger gamut in terms of funding. Where does the source of funding? What is the contractor? So this is one big area I think that we need to focus on. The second, to my mind, is having a one-stop shop. That means, in a sense, the mayor model, perhaps, as we see in London, in Johannesburg, in Chengdu, which was just presented, where we have one single mayor who is responsible for planning, who's responsible for setting up a detailed transportation plan, who's available for managing the housing. We need to have the buck needs to stop somewhere. Today, I can share with you in Gurgaon, one of my colleagues was heading Gurgaon as a municipal commissioner. And I would discuss with him I would ask him, why are you not able to, energize your forces to bring about a change in the quality of roads that we have in Gurgaon? And the answer was, I'm not empowered. I don't have enough power. So again, do we need to set up a mayoral type of structure where the buck stops at one place and everyone, all the departments, all the functionaries in a way report to that particular single agency? And again, it has to be a well-empowered, a strong person or a strong organization or a strong institution which needs to be set up there. Planning, as already mentioned, we need to have a fairly detailed plan. Today, most of the time, we are trying to catch up. We are playing catch up. We are not on top of things. And one of the reasons I see it, because as a nation, we are always handling the here and now. then and there somehow escapes our attention. I've seen that with Indian Railways, which is a huge organization, and I was sharing, 50 years ago, the Frontier Mail, which used to travel starting from Delhi to Bombay, would traverse that distance in a period of 24 hours. Today, we have modernized our signaling systems. Today, we have double track. Today, we have much better capabilities and competencies. But yet, it still takes 24 hours because we are unable to beat our way out of the congestion. 60 years down, we are still moving at average speed of 22 kilometers per hour on the Indian Railways. Are we not behind? Are we not behind the curve, behind the change? Can we force change? Can we be ahead of the change? And that's a thought that I think we really need to that's something we need to introspect and really to consider on how can we be on top of changes rather than waiting for things to happen and then move into a reactive mode. A lot of cities have really transformed, and Mr. Patel made an excellent. I liked the pictorial presentation, which looked at Singapore, 50 years ago, Chengdu, Los Angeles, etc., New York. The kind of changes that can happen if we start to plan a little bit ahead of schedule is amazing. The good thing with, as we have seen from the earlier presentation, is that the problem looks huge and intimidating. But yet, if we all put our heads together, if we set up the proper governance structures, we are able to organize our financing systems, we have a proper sectoral policies, we can expedite and we can make a significant change in a very short period of time, and that's the good news. I come from Alstom today, and Alstom is, I don't know how many of you have heard of it, but Alstom is the world's leader in the transport business, more so on the rail side. We cover the entire gamut of the transport business, starting from tramways on the one end to the TGVs and the AGVs. So we have the world record for the fastest train, which runs at 574.6 kilometers per hour. We are also into signaling, we are into telecommunication, we are into track manufacturing, track construction. So we cover the entire gamut. Looking at the emerging markets and looking at the need to develop a low-cost solution for urban transport and for improving the level of fluidity, we've come up with a turnkey solution, which is called Axonis, and I'm happy to be talking about it to all of you today. This is actually the first forum where, in India at least, where I'm sharing this new product with you. Axonis is a turnkey solution. It's an integrated solution, and it's designed for the kind of for handling the serious challenges that we face today in urban transport and in urban fluidity. As a result of substantial research in developing this product, we are now today able to finish an entire project with Axonis technology, Axonis solution, over a period of 4 to 5 years. So that means the entire solution, starting from the ground, we are able to complete it in 4 to 5 years. And there are a number of pieces to it, and the pieces I will share subsequently. Not only are we able to finish the project in time, it's also a low-cost solution. Unlike the kind of, it's not, of course, comparable to the DMRC, Delhi Metro type of size of traffic which we have to handle. The Axonis is more geared for tier 2 type of cities, for example, Noida, Greater Noida, Faridabad, Gurgaon, etc., etc. So it's targeted for the tier 2 cities. It has a much lesser footprint, which means that we don't need the kind of viaduct that we currently see on Delhi Metro. It's a narrower viaduct. We are able to finish the project much faster at a much lower cost, and most important, it has very low operations cost. This is a picture of Axonis.
Mr. Salhotra, we have to interrupt. We have 5 minutes.
Yeah, no? Sure. I'll finish. Thank you. So axon is, as you see, as you see in the picture, if you look at the pillars, you see it's a tubular structure. Maybe it's not that clear in the picture. Maybe in the next one it will be. The viaduct at the top is narrower. The trains are lighter. The trains are fully powered. That means every single axle has a motor available on it. And that improves the acceleration deceleration capability. It has the capacity to fit into the landscape really well. So for example, the kind of grades that it can handle up to 6%. That means 6% grades are possible. It can climb fairly sharp, steep climbs it can undertake. It can also undertake very sharp curves. So which kind of, it fits into the landscape of the city pretty seamlessly. And it's a driverless operation. So we don't need it to be fully manned. It's a completely safe. It uses a number of world-class subsystems which combine together to produce what is called the Axodus. As I said, I think this is probably a clearer picture where you see the girders are tubular. They are also modular. So you can this can be cast at the site or can be transported over on the truck. Narrower pillars, narrower viaduct, lesser footprint, faster construction. Again, very economical to acquire. As I said, it's not meant for very heavy peak traffic, which we see in Delhi, but it's definitely very useful for tier 2, tier 2, tier 3 cities, which are going to be about 55, 60 number in the country today. And as I have already mentioned, very strong capability to manage curvature and ramps. There are some key technologies that come into this. One, of course, is the rolling stock itself, which uses HESOP, which is our internal product. That allows 100%, almost 99% of the braking energy is pumped back into the grid. So, typically in Delhi Metro, for example, 18% of essentially of the total energy gets pushed into the network every time a train brakes. Every time the train applies friction brakes. In this case, because every single axle is powered, the energy consumption is substantially much less. It's much more, therefore, greener and more sustainable as a solution. We use a technology called EpiTrack for construction of the track. And through this technology, we are able to finish 1 kilometer of track a day. That's the speed of construction. We use a very, very state-of-the-art signaling system, which is the U500 Fluence solution, which is substantially cheaper than the one that is currently being deployed in Bangalore and in Delhi Metro, etc., etc. So all in all, it's a very, very competitive and a very quick to be implemented solution. Lower capex and lower opex, and it kind of fits into the Indian scenario as we move forward.
Mr. Salhotra, we've crossed the time limit.
Yeah, I'm already done. Yeah. So this is, as I said, we are just beginning to launch this here in India. Next month we will have a full seminar on this, and I would be happy to invite some of you who are interested in it to get more details about this product. Thank you very much.